long dramatic pause. Good afternoon, San Diego. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Claire McKee, and this is Real Talk San Diego, bringing you the business of life in America's finest city. As always, the show is presented by our loyal partners at 5 Star Escrow and Stewart Title. And joining me today is Madeline Hill. She's an attorney and founder of QDRO Helper. Hi, Madeline.
Hi.
Glad to have you here today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Absolutely. And Laurie Itkin, she is back. She is the options lady, and she's also a certified divorce financial analyst. Hey, Laurie.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here. We have such an important topic to discuss today for everybody.
Yes, we do. I was shocked. I have never heard of what a QDRO is until I talked to Madeline, and I'm guessing a lot of you have not heard of that either, so we are going to dive into that today. But before we start, if you have not already, please like our page. That way you can be notified every time we go live on Real Talk. And of course, the best thing about being live with you is that we get to interact with you, our audience. So please, if you're watching, drop us a comment. Lale's already coming through and saying hello. Hope everyone is well. We have 5 live viewers out there already. Thanks for watching. So prove you're watching and drop us a little comment. And again, feel free to ask questions. We will address those on air for you. So, Laurie, if people don't already know you, we're going to start with you. Tell us, who are you and what do you do?
I am a financial advisor and certified divorce financial analyst, and we go by CDFA. And you can find me at theoptionslady.com and mediationmoneymentor.com.
Ooh, all the acronyms, the mediation money mentor.
I took it before it was taken.
That sounds good. It really flows off the tongue.
Because if you're in mediation, you need a money mentor.
Yeah, you do. That's right. And Madeline, I'm going to ask you the same question. Who are you and what do you do?
I'm Madeline Hill. I'm an attorney who specializes in QDROs, QDRO, and that's the court order required to divide retirement benefits and divorce. That's all I do. I only deal with that asset. If you have questions about child support or spousal support, I am not the person to call. But if there's retirement assets and they need to be divided, I'm your lady for that.
Gotcha.
So that's me, where you can find me online. QDROHelper.com is my website. And of course, I'm happy to take calls from people if they have any questions, whatever stage in the process they're at.
Awesome. Great.
I just sent her a friend from high school.
Oh, yeah?
Yep.
I love that. See, we're all connected. So, Laurie, you wanted to start off by just sharing why the heck dividing retirement plans is so important in the first place.
All right, look, folks, if you're getting a divorce, there are 2 major assets. That's the house, if you have a house, and the retirement accounts. And this is so important. Why do we care about retirement accounts? Because retirement accounts are what is going to pay you money when you're no longer earning income. So think about this. When you're 60, when you're 70, you're going to need a big pot of money that's going to pay you income to supplement Social Security. So there are a lot of mistakes made when dividing retirement accounts in divorce. Madeline's going to go into some detail about those, but let me just talk about generally what happens. So 2 biggest mistakes that I see is in a divorce, one spouse will want to keep the house. Sometimes it's the woman, the wife, if she has children that are still in school. And the wife may say, you know what, I'm going to keep the house, he can keep the retirement assets. Big mistake if we haven't analyzed the values. The second major mistake I see is, well, you keep your retirement, I'll keep my retirement. That's just, it's fair and it's easy. We don't have to divide anything. Oh gosh.
That sounds straightforward, right? It does.
Yeah.
So why is that not straightforward?
Well, because especially in community property states, which California is a community property state, it is presumed that things that you earn together or acquire in a marriage are presumed to be split 50-50, at least as a starting point. Okay, not in all cases, but so that's the general starting point.
Including your separate retirement funds.
Yeah, and you may have had some separate property in those funds from before marriage or after separation, but that's what you can deal with on the outliers. So let's just talk about the 3 major ones, because I want everybody watching to understand the general terms. The easiest accounts to divide are individual retirement accounts, IRAs. You're going to have a Roth IRA and every other type of IRA. That can be a SEP IRA. If you're self-employed, you have a business. It can be a traditional IRA. It can be a rollover IRA. Okay, but the Roth IRA is not valued the same as a different IRA, because with a Roth, when you take the money out for retirement, you pay no taxes on it. With the other IRAs, you will have to pay taxes on those distributions. Okay, so IRAs are typically pretty straightforward because you know what you contributed. You can look at the monthly account statement, you see there's $150,000 in that account, okay. Now, the next layer of complexity is another, what we call defined contribution plan, 401ks. If you are a government employee, you may have the TSP. If you work for a nonprofit, maybe a 403B. Okay, the acronyms can get confusing, but again, you can look at your statement and pretty much know. You are going to need, in many cases, a QDRO to divide these, and Madeline will talk in detail about that. They can be divided. The last one where I see major errors is pensions. Pensions can be so valuable, especially if you're a teacher. Maybe you've worked for a private company, and lots of people, when they're disclosing the value of their assets on their financial affidavits, they may take their statement and think their pension is worth $80,000 when in reality it could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Okay, so gentlemen and ladies, if you are getting a divorce, if you are putting your assets down on your sheet of assets and debt, really pay attention to this, and please don't make trade-offs until you have all the answers. You want to know what is fair, and then you can go from there.
Okay, so is step number one, if we find ourselves in this situation, to call someone like you who can analyze the situation and know what we're working with to start off in the first place?
Yes, absolutely. So whether or not, if you have an attorney representing you, the attorneys usually will do a pretty good job of laying this stuff out, although they make mistakes as well, as Madeline will talk later on. I know I'm not going to take her fire away. But you also, if you're going through mediation, you may want to work with somebody like me, a CDFA. That's why I have Mediation Money Mentor. It's a flat rate service because I can help you alone or you and your spouse really understand the differences and explain the tax consequences and explain options for dividing or trading assets off one another. So, but you definitely, if a pension's involved, you want some external help, believe me.
Okay, so we kind of laid out the difference between the IRA, the 401k versus a pension.
Right.
Is this something that we need to be thinking about when we're signing up for these type of accounts in the first place? What might benefit me the most? Should I get married and eventually divorce? Because I don't think that's what people are thinking about, right, when you open your 401k, but maybe we should be.
That is true. So keep records. I will give this suggestion. If you have been working and you've built up a retirement account, keep records. I would suggest that the month that you are married, keep the monthly statements. Wouldn't you say that might be a good idea to do?
Absolutely. That's one of the things that people, I think, emotionally, as they're going through the divorce process, they think, well, especially once it's done, I'm over this. I don't want to deal with my ex anymore. I'm going to basically just have a fire sale and just destroy every record that I've ever had related to this person because emotionally I'm done.
Yeah.
Then they find out 6 months, a year, sometimes 10 years later, I need those records to determine what I'm entitled to in the retirement plan. And now they're gone. And sometimes the plans don't keep records for that long.
That's what I was going to ask you. Is that not tracked somewhere, like my bank account, that I can see every statement ever?
It's going to be hit or miss. I'm working with couples who might have been, have a 401k that's been going on for 20 years, and to try to get some of those statements. Why it's important is if, let's say you had $50,000, Claire, in your retirement account, then you get married. Well, at least in, again, every state is different, so I'll speak to California. You may have the ability to keep that separate property, your balance, and not have to split that with your spouse. And furthermore, with proper records, you may even be entitled to the growth of those separate assets. Mm-hmm. So people just assume, oh, we're married, we split everything 50-50. If you have some separate property, if you're a professional and you've built up money, you really want to keep at least the monthly statement from when you got married, or the quarterly statement, something close.
At a minimum.
At a minimum.
At a minimum.
Thank you.
And I mean, maybe it's even a matter of if they send you a monthly statement via email, you just start and put it in a folder for another date,
Sure.
out of sight, out of mind, but
Good
at least
idea.
you have it for future references.
Yeah, and especially if you have a prenup, you're going to have those statements anyways if you have a prenup from
Okay.
about the time. But I mean, here's the bottom line. Before we get into the weeds here, the bottom line is that people ignore the value of pensions. These are the things that could be paying you $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 a month later on, 30 years from now, okay, depending on your age. And also what's so important, a lot of people cash out, we'll talk about it afterwards, but they get their portion of the retirement assets after the divorce and they cash out the money. And boy, you just have to understand that keeping money to build and invest and compound in retirement accounts is your key to wealth. So I would love to hear Madeline talk about getting into more of the details. What does this all mean? What do you do?
Okay, so tying back to what Laurie said about the 3 different types of basic retirement assets, usually for individual retirement accounts, because they're technically owned by a person, they're not managed by the employer, they're held in the individual's name, you usually won't need my services or a QDRO for that. You can go to Laurie, and usually those can be divided through use of a form and other documents. You don't need an actual QDRO. Now, what a QDRO is, remember it's QDRO, that stands for Qualified Domestic Relations Order. And basically it's just a very specific type of court order that's required due to the federal laws that govern retirement plans. So when you work for an employer, there are all sorts of protections for those retirement benefits. You know, they're protected from things like bankruptcy. So that's why there are all these laws protecting, making sure only the employee has access to these funds. There's an exception to those anti-alienation provisions allowing a former spouse to get access to those funds via a QDRO. So that's where the QDRO comes in. It's the court order that really tells the retirement plan, this person, the employee was married, they have a former spouse, they've gone through a divorce, this is what the former spouse gets directly from you. This is the former spouse's interest. So most people, when they have a divorce decree, a judgment, usually there's a couple sentences, sometimes a few paragraphs about the division of the retirement benefits. Just so people can understand the kind of detail involved, you know, the references to the tax code and the federal laws and everything else that needs to be included. A QDRO is usually anywhere from 4 to 10 pages long. So much more detailed than the basic things that occur in the judgment. A lot of people make the mistake of thinking, my divorce is finalized, I have a judgment that says I get $20,000 from the 401k. Why do I even need a QDRO?
Oh gosh, can I talk about some stories here? Do you know, people come to me years after their divorce papers were signed. She knows this because she handles the calls. Laurie, I was supposed to get some money from his retirement account. I think he's retired now. I don't know. They never took the step. It costs money. Okay, let's just be honest. It costs money. Madeline has a flat rate service, which is great. But once you sign the divorce papers, you need to spend a little more money to actually get this stuff divided. And people fight over it. I mean, a lot of the settlements will be that each spouse needs to share in the cost of getting the QDRO drafted. And just don't put it off. Don't put it off. Do it. And the bottom line is, if you're supposed to get money from a 401k or the thrift savings plan or a 403b or any other type of defined contribution plan, you may very well need a QDRO. Definitely with a pension, you're going to need a QDRO.
So if you have a QDRO, am I just going to get a check in the mail when my ex-spouse retires? How does that work?
Well, it depends on the type of plan, but when talking about defined contributions plans like Laurie mentioned, something like a 401k, what actually happens with the QDRO process is the account will be divided. So essentially, the employee spouse will have a 401k account, the former spouse will have a 401k account in that same 401k plan. Now, those funds can stay with that 401k plan if that's what the party wants. Or they could do a rollover into their own, IRA, or if they have a 401k with their own employer, they might do a rollover into that.
Okay.
You could potentially take cash if you wanted to. Of course, there are drawbacks and tax reasons why that might not be wise, as well as your financial future.
Laurie says no, for sure.
Right. Sometimes
I don't like that idea.
people want to cash things out for a down payment on a home or other things.
Or they have if they have lots of credit card debt, maybe with high interest rates, well then I can see it may be prudent.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, but basically for that type of a plan, essentially it's split into 2 accounts.
Okay.
Nothing will happen as far as the distribution or actual payment until the non-employee contacts the plan and says, this is what I want to do.
Gotcha.
Now, a very good tip that a lot of people miss for tax purposes. QDROs themselves, one reason that you want a QDRO is certain tax protections. So usually if you're under age 59 and a half and you want to take out a distribution from your retirement plan, you're hit with a 10% early withdrawal penalty. On top of the regular taxation and withholding and everything else, you have that extra 10% penalty. But there's an exception in the tax code that if you're taking the funds via a QDRO, you don't get hit with that 10% penalty. So that's
But you still have to pay all the taxes, which
You
can be
do.
very high, and they're going to withhold some of your money, and you're not going to get all the money right away.
Correct. But
Don't forget those.
if someone needs cash, that's one of the benefits of the QDRO. It's a way to not have to pay that extra 10% penalty.
Okay.
But the key there is it needs to be with that original plan. So say you've got the Walmart 401k plan or your former spouse does, you end up having your own account created.
Okay.
The only way you can get that tax protection is to take your distribution directly from that Walmart 401k. If you do a rollover into your IRA 10 days after the account's created and it was all done because of a QDRO, the company that you're using for your IRA, you ask for a distribution, they say that's lovely, the 10% penalty applies. So sometimes it's beneficial to leave those funds invested in the original account that's created for you because of that 10% benefit, essentially.
Understood. So we're talking a lot about QDRO, and I kind of want to back it up. What is entailed in obtaining a QDRO? Is it a long process? Is there a ton of documentation involved? What can someone expect if they meet with you?
Most of the documentation that I ask for from the clients is very straightforward. I mean, of course, I'm going to want to look at their divorce judgment, see what the court's already ordered as far as the division. Part of my job as the QDRO attorney is honestly often filling in any gaps that are in that judgment, those details that aren't addressed. So I may need to have a conversation with the clients about specific details. But what I need from them is usually really simple information, name, address, social security number, date of birth. The plan always needs that for tax purposes, and the basic information about the retirement plan being divided. There are thousands and thousands of plans in the world. Sometimes I talk to clients, they're not even sure who their ex's employer was. I need to at least know what the plan is, who I can contact.
Gotcha.
So, if you're going through the divorce process, I recommend get copies of retirement plan statements for any retirement plan assets and hold on to those until you're ready for the QDRO process, because sometimes I really have to piece things together and search tax records that plans have filed to even try to figure out what the plan is, who I can contact.
I'm overwhelmed. I'm not even married, let alone getting divorced. And I'm like, what if this, I need to take notes. Grab your notepads, folks, because this is serious stuff and it's not talked about enough.
Yeah, but what's great? So Madeline's website, QDROhelper.com, she's got a lot of good information. Everything she's saying here, it's really well laid out. Like you might have this pension, that pension, that pension. She has a lot of one-page information. She tells you what you need, so it's a good resource.
Amazing. So
that's why it's Helper, QDRO Helper.
And we need the help.
I strive to educate people. My goal is to make the process as painless as possible for people. It's a very complicated thing, but part of my job is to translate, put it into plain English, help people understand, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for my future? When they suddenly have retirement funds and they've never been the money manager in the marriage, that's when they can go back over to Laurie and say, I got this money from the QDRO. What should I be doing with this to make sure it keeps growing?
Let's make a plan. Yeah. So I'm smiling because you say it's painless, but I also know that many people call you in great pain because they did not file their QDRO. So can you just talk about some of the pitfalls or what can happen if you've been divorced for 2 decades and now you realize you want to, take advantage of this and cannot, essentially?
Of course, yeah. I mean, the main issues that I would see, again, is related to the 2 main types of retirement plans. Things like with the 401ks that we mentioned, if there aren't records available, if there's premarital property, if these records don't exist, how are the 2 people ever going to agree on what amount is supposed to be transferred via a QDRO?
Right.
If you have no records, you can retain all the experts you want. Each expert can come back with a different theory based on, Dow Jones performance or other things about what it should be. So that's a major pitfall. That's one of the reasons why it's best to do the QDRO as close in time as possible to the actual divorce. Another thing that happens a lot if people think about their own retirement plans is your employer may be contracted with Fidelity Investments right now to handle the record keeping for their retirement plan. But 3 years from now, they may get a quote from Charles Schwab that says, we'll take less fees. So all your account records during your marriage were with Fidelity. Now they've switched to Charles Schwab.
Bad situation. It's a bad situation.
You go to Charles Schwab, the current plan administrator with the QDRO, saying, I'm entitled to this amount as of this date, and they're going to basically put their hands up and say, we don't have those records. The company was using Fidelity at that point. If they can't be obtained, you have to come up with something as of a recent date since we took over. So those are the kind of issues with 401ks, with valuation, why it's critical to move quickly when you're getting divorced. Now with pension plans, it's a completely different circumstance.
And let me just start with the pension plan. Let me just say this. I mean, people get really angry about pension plans. Like they're attached to those things like, I mean, people who have worked for a county government, you know, or the federal government, or a teacher, and they've worked 20, 30 years, and they think, this is my pension, my spouse isn't getting any of this, and if they think they're going to retire with $5,000 a month, and now they think, oh my gosh, I'm only get $2,500 a month because my spouse has to get half, this gets so ugly, and we are here to help.
Yeah. Exactly, to explain
Da,
why
da,
things
da, da, like-
why they're done the way they're done and things like that. But with pensions, you don't have the same valuation issues, because when you have a pension plan, the typical formula, though it can vary, is something like the number of years you've worked, a salary factor like your final compensation, and an age factor, the age you're retiring. So you don't really have to worry about detailed records as much. Basically, you know, the formula and the QDRO is going to be related to the number of years during the marriage. It's, you know, you don't have to worry about having as many detailed records. But the issues with that are things like if you've waited too long and you've been divorced for 10 years and it's fallen off your radar, and then you hear from your kids or a friend that your ex retired and you never had a QDRO done. Not only have they already been receiving money that technically you might be entitled to because you have a community interest, and the second those pension payments started, you should have been getting a portion. There's that issue. That's almost straightforward to correct compared to some of the other issues. One of the main issues with pension benefits is they're not an account that has a beneficiary like a 401k. You die, there's $100,000 left, it goes to the beneficiaries. For pension plans, you have to choose an option when you retire. Most people, especially if they're not married, the maximum benefits you're going to get each month, it's called a single life annuity, which means everything is guaranteed for the employee's life only.
So when the employee dies, nobody gets nothing, right?
All payments stop.
Well, that's
So
bad
if
grammar,
you-
but you get it.
But if you
I don't get nothing.
Exactly. Keep that in mind. Swear right in here. But basically, I mean, that's the situation. If you come to me to do a QDRO and your ex is already retired and has already taken a single life annuity, legally, I cannot change the option that that person chose at retirement. No court order on earth can violate the terms of the plan, make them recalculate benefits, or go back and recalculate what this person should be receiving.
But there's a cost to this, right? So if I am divorced or getting divorced, right, and I choose to have a beneficiary option, that means that I'm choosing to get less when I retire.
Correct.
Tell me how you guide people through that.
Well, and some of it is very plan specific. There are certain pension plans which are ideal for divorce as much as they possibly can be, where each person's interest in the pension can be based on their own life expectancy. So you don't have to worry about if my ex dies, then I'll suddenly get nothing each month. You know, you can have it rebased on your own life expectancy. So some pensions allow that. When they do, it's the ideal situation as a QDRO attorney. Again, you still need to come to me before retirement. But, you know, that way we can make sure that each party is protected. But a lot of plans will have options where everything is based on the participant's life. And to make sure that that former spouse continues to receive income after retirement, even if the participant, the employee, passes away first, you have to have survivor benefits. And the survivor benefits are something that you really do need to talk to someone who's an expert in the area and has read the terms of the actual plan being divided, because it is different across the board. There is no one size fits all for survivor benefits. The general takeaway is essentially any time that you're providing for benefits over more than one lifetime, there's going to be a reduction in the monthly benefits. So if you are supposed to get $2,000 a month, and that's what you would get if you were saying single life annuity, only cover my life, might be $2,000 a month. If you say, I want you to also protect my ex and make sure my ex or my current spouse even continues to receive funds, they might look at the age difference and other factors, and they may say, instead of $2,000 a month, we're going to give you $1,800 a month. And that $200 is that reduction to pay for those survivor benefits. So it's almost beneficial to think of survivor benefits like life insurance. you have to pay a premium out of your pension each month. And then should the employee die first, there are these additional benefits that continue, almost like a life insurance policy, but it is a separate issue.
What happens in the instance of the employee passing before retirement?
That is, again, plan specific. So sometimes, often through a QDRO, you can secure pre-retirement death benefits. A lot of employers do have pre-retirement death benefits that can be paid to a surviving spouse or a surviving former spouse. Some of them don't. Some plans have options where at that point the beneficiaries get a cash refund of what was
it's not
put in.
all that much. That's the
Yeah,
problem,
yeah,
right?
someone's getting the
So-
short end of the stick here, I
it's
feel
not
like.
a lot of money
Which is
usually.
why you never, like she was saying, you never want to just blindly say one person keeps the retirement and one person keeps the house.
Yeah, because someone could really get shorted.
Very, very. I mean, no one thinks they're going to die, but the survivor benefits are really important. And the age differences, and you don't know. Healthy people have heart attacks. You just don't know.
Right.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's and then you wonder, obviously if you're in mediation or you have an attorney, there's a lot of attorneys who probably aren't that skilled in this, in the negotiations of how do we negotiate, how is there going to be the annuity reduction, right?
Right.
How's that even negotiated between the parties?
Right.
Yeah, because a lot of plans will allow for that cost in a QDRO to be specified. Whatever reduction there is to make sure that the former spouse continues to receive benefits, how is that reduction going to be applied? Equally between the parties, entirely by the non-employee? So that's one of those issues that is very rarely addressed in divorce judgments that I have to come in and try to sort out for the parties exactly what should be happening for those kind of issues.
Good times.
And
Yeah.
take and
Welcome to my world.
look, there's a lot of people that come to me, Laurie, I don't want to spend a lot of money on this divorce. Do we really need mediation? There are a few there's that you can represent yourself in divorce. There's some online, actually there's a company called Hello Divorce that does California on sort of self-divorce stuff, but they have support when you need it. There are actual attorneys there to help you if you need it. My concern is when people want to save money and they have retirement assets like this and they're just I see it all the time. One spouse will say to me, I want to go to mediation, but my spouse, the husband usually doesn't want to do it. Sorry to me, I don't want to use gender specific, but it's true. And gosh, all the mistakes that can be made if you don't understand this stuff. And I mean, we're constantly, even us in the field, are constantly learning new things about these things,
absolutely.
wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Oh.
And yeah, people doing it themselves. I mean, I can't tell you how many clients I have each year who they get a sample QDRO or a model order from their plan administrator. It says sample right on the top. They fill in their information, they send it to their plan, and the plan says, this looks great, that'll work. And then they try to take it to the court, and of course it's not a valid court order because it's just a sample form filled out. It's not a legally binding court. Yes, exactly. In California, and then they call me and they're very frustrated. Why do I need a QDRO? I filled this out. My plan said it was fine, but unfortunately, what I see probably 8 times out of 10, they've filled it out incorrectly. People going through the divorce process don't understand. When you're getting a divorce, you're looking at the valuation date typically being the date of separation, not the date the divorce is finalized. Things like gains and losses for a 401k need to be addressed. What if somebody took out a loan on the 401k when they were married? So what purpose did you use that loan for?
Right.
Was that a community loan that you should both be responsible for, or was that a separate property loan? Things like death and survivor benefits, if it's a pension. So those kind of issues where people try themselves, it's almost a good thing that the court wouldn't accept it, because then I can tell them, this is a huge mistake. This could cost you thousands of dollars. This is, something that really should be addressed. So it's one of those issues where
Oh my gosh. I mean,
it's best to
bottom
talk to a pro.
line, exactly. You just have to hire a professional. I'm ready to hire someone to figure out how to fill out the form to get my car title, because I'm reading it and I'm like, what is this talking about? This is not user-friendly at all. So something this complex, I mean, you bottom line have to hire a professional.
Yeah, and I mean, people I get all the time, Madeline knows, people want to trade assets. One spouse is so desperate to figure out a way to keep the house or to have cash so that they can buy a new house. Everybody wants to buy the house, and they are just desperate to trade, and they don't really, they just want to get rid of it. They'll take no retirement assets in exchange for some cash somewhere else. Huge mistakes. Please don't be in a rush. I know you don't really want to stay married to somebody that you want to get a divorce you don't want to be married anymore, but don't rush this stuff.
So let's talk about that. I want to unpack that
Yeah.
a little bit more. What should someone do before they actually receive their money from the 401k, pension, IRA, whatever that looks like?
Well, so sometimes the pensions are later on in life, but let's just look at the immediate ones. The easier ones, I call them easy, they're not always easy, but let's say the IRAs, the individual retirement accounts. We often see that when somebody has worked for a company, they leave the company and they roll their 401k into an IRA so that they can manage the investments themselves, don't have to be stuck with just mutual funds. So, you know, when people come to me now, you know, I help people analyzing the finances during divorce, but I also have many clients after the divorce, particularly women come to me. So once the marital settlement agreement is signed before the divorce is final, that's a great time to come and meet with a financial advisor about this, because they can say, Laurie, here's the breakdown of our assets. I'm going to get, you know, half of this 401k. I'm going to get part of this IRA will be transferred. I'm going to walk away with $400,000 in retirement assets. What do I need to do now?
Right.
A lot of these people have never been involved in making investment decisions. Maybe they've made some mutual fund choices in their 401k, but not much else. And so we sit down and we say, okay, how old are you? Are you going to be receiving any child support? Are you going to be receiving any spousal support? For how long? Are you going to continue to work? Do you have to go back to work? We basically want to do just vanilla financial planning to see, you know, what is your risk tolerance? How much do we need that money, that pot of money to be worth? Are we going to be conservative? Are we going to be aggressive? So it's a perfect time. And here's what's such an interesting statistic. Couples that have a financial advisor, that they use it together, there is so much change. When there's a divorce, I found it myself. Women come to me and they say, I think my financial advisor was biased towards my husband. They never paid attention to me. I'd come to the meetings, they'd talk to my husband, and so they want to change.
Interesting.
But the bottom line is we have to figure out, you have a pot of money now here in retirement assets, the retirement funds. Are you going to cash any of these out and deal with some of the tax issues that Madeline talked about, meaning that you think you have $50,000, you may only have $30,000 after penalties and taxes are paid, okay? So what are we going to do? How's that money going to, we want to make sure that you don't run out of money in retirement in the future.
Good time for a strategy session.
Absolutely, the best time, right? Before, you know, and also before you sign the marital settlement agreement, I want women and men to come to me and say, this is what we're looking like I'm going to keep the house and I'm going to give up all the retirement assets. I'll be like, wait, can we look at this again?
Right, like what do you think?
Right.
Is there ever a time where it makes sense to pull out the money for cash and invest it elsewhere? Or is it generally speaking because of the penalties and taxes that it's not worth it?
As Madeline talked about, there was a special case with a QDRO with a defined contribution plan, typically a 401k plan, but I think some other
403B, 457B, all of those plans would be similar.
More numbers.
More numbers, acronyms, but it's a defined contribution plan. So there are cases, if everything's aligned, you have to check with the administrator, every plan's different, but there are many cases where you can elect to take your proceeds that you're supposed to get out all in cash or partially in cash. And if maybe, let's say 2019, you think you're going to be in a very low tax bracket, so alimony or spousal support is no longer taxable income to you. So you may have a situation where one spouse is going to be making no taxable income. Maybe they want to cash out that 401k because they'll be in such a low income tax bracket that their tax burden may be very minimal, if at all.
Great point.
But my concern is the timing. Let's talk about the timing, because how do we know that that money will actually be received in the calendar year where you are making little to no income?
Oh, that's true.
So let's talk about what have you found with the timing of 401k QDROs?
And it's that horrible attorney answer again, that it depends. It's the answer that everyone expects and hates getting from attorneys. It depends. A lot of it has to do with the actual QDRO timing itself. You know, even within this year in San Diego County alone, we had some courts that were taking literally 5 to 7 months to even file the QDRO and get it back to someone. So your QDRO could have been signed in January. You might not have gotten it from that court until May or July. It was sitting at the court for months.
So a whole nother reason to do it immediately, though.
Right. But they've gotten better. So, you know, right now, you know, closer to 1 to 3 months for filing at most of our local courts. But it is hard to bank exactly. Then once you have that signed court order, that QDRO, you have to send it back over to the retirement plan. They need to do their process. They might send it to their legal department, their plan record keeper to run a calculation. So usually it's around 30 to 60 days from the time they receive it until they're actually transferring funds. It could be 90. It could be 120 days.
6 months. I mean, that it's getting passed around from all the people that need to see it and approve and sign off. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
so it is hard to predict. Until that separate account has actually been created, it is hard to plan what kind of distribution you're looking at, because then, again, you'd fill out distribution forms, and then those have to be processed as well. You're going to have to fill out tax withholding forms. All of that paperwork needs to go through the proper channels as well. So it's not overnight.
Yeah.
So the easiest thing is to just say, this is retirement funds. I wasn't planning to take them out yet anyway. I'm only 39 years old or what have you, and just keep it invested.
Let it keep brewing.
Right.
Yep.
Exactly.
Awesome. So we are going to wrap up here. Laurie, I want to come back to you and just ask, what is the takeaway? What do you want people to remember for today?
Yeah, the takeaway is that retirement assets, no matter how much they're worth, are going to be one of the biggest issues in your divorce. Please take the time to understand them. There's lots of information out there. Please don't be penny wise, pound foolish. If you need to spend an hour, 2 or 3 with a CDFA or financial advisor, do so and really understand. And I think just be open with your spouse about different ideas of how to divide them. And in doubt, don't be pressured or bullied. That's one thing I want to add. Don't let any spouse pressure or bully you. Even if you did not earn that retirement plan directly, it could very well and probably is community property.
Yes, the family code says that it is, so keep that in mind. If you're being bullied, if you're being pressured, the family code says it's community property, says survivor benefits are also community property. So just be strong, know your own rights, talk to someone else if you aren't sure of what your rights are, and take the time. Don't be in such a hurry to be done with everything that you end up missing out or signing away something that you're going to regret in the future.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's Madeline Hill. She's an attorney and founder of QDRO Helper, and you can find her at QDROHelper.com. QDRO is QDRO, by the way, so QDROHelper.com. And Laurie Itkin, she is the Options Lady, and you can find her at theoptionslady.com. And what's your fun new M1?
My other one is Mediation Money Mentor.
Love it. So bottom line, if you take away anything from today, hire a team of professionals. The Options Lady and QDRO Helper totally got your back. Thank you, Madeline and Laurie, so much for being here today. And thank you to everybody who stuck with us and watched our live show. It will be up later, so feel free to send this around, share the video. Somebody who may be going through a divorce and needs to hear this information, please share, share, share. And thank you so much for watching. This has been Real Talk San Diego, coming to you live from Smarter San Diego Studios. I'm Claire McKee. Go love everyone, and we'll catch you next time. Almost in 2019, I think. Have a good Christmas.